This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Hey guys, we'll try this again. Keith Angle, live with a TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. I actually started the wrong show. Oh my God. Hope nobody was live on Facebook at 7 o'clock. I really apologize if I booted somebody. It might have been Jamie Paggs. I don't know. I'm really sorry. I had the wrong show. I had a show queued up for tomorrow morning for started up the wrong show. So anyway, you're watching now TGI Sports Talk's College Football Huddle live on Facebook, both on TGI Sports Talk and Northeast Streaming Sports, live on YouTube on both streams, live on Twitter. You'll see us tomorrow at 11:30 and repeat it again Friday and maybe early next week. We'll stop those repeats on Monday, Tuesday, once the season starts because it makes no sense. The games will have been played that we've already talked about. Welcome to everybody. Glad to have you in tonight. We'll talk about everything around the world of college football. We'll talk about some of the top 25 coaching poll stuff, even though, preseason polls are what they are. We got to talk about them. We'll talk maybe some of the conference outlooks for the Power Five. Doubt we'll get all, and maybe the group of six. I mean, we'll see how far we get tonight. And next week we'll cover anything we don't tonight. Certainly want your input and topics. And we'll get Larry Sorensen on back hopefully next week because we're going to have some real football here in a couple of weeks, guys. It's that time. And welcome. So I'm glad everybody's here. I do see we got some people in the room now, and I apologize. Good evening, Carlos. How are you? Good to have you, the Mad New Yorkers, in the room. We'll see who else joins us tonight live, and certainly look forward to your comments and feedback, and whoever I might have bumped on Roku tonight. I apologize, guys. Yikes. I'm looking to see if I got any texts here, and I don't. So, bad mistake on my part. Hopefully it didn't go too badly. Maybe there was nobody live over there. We hope not. Let's take a look. I want to talk about some of the stories going on around college football. There's a couple of big stories to chat about before we dive into anything else. A couple of injury issues that we can chat about quickly. And I certainly want to get into your topics as well. And again, I apologize for the informal attire, but I've just had a heck of a day and I had to get in the shower and I just couldn't put on a real shirt again. So I apologize. It's just been one of those days. It's been one of those weeks. It's Wednesday. I got a short week, actually. I'm off Friday and Monday as I will be celebrating the 23rd anniversary of my 39th birthday on Monday, and we got a long weekend as we'll be going to New York, the New York, New Jersey area, Saturday and Sunday. We'll be in Carlos's territory. We'll be going to see Kenny Chesney on Saturday night and sticking around overnight and coming home Sunday. So anyway, let's move on to some conversation about football. 2 weeks till they start games, guys. Where are we anyway? I want to take a quick look at this. I want the days we start. What is week 0? What's week 0 look like? The 27th of August. So that is 2 weeks. Is that 2 weeks from Sunday or Saturday? What's the date? Saturday, the 13th? That's 2 weeks from Saturday. Real football. Not a huge, I read an article this week before I get into some news. An article about how to make week 0 better. And that's to play the bowl games at the beginning of the season rather than the end. Still have your playoff. And if it's 12 or 16 or 8 or 4 or whatever it is, still play your major bowl games and make them part of the playoff and have the bowl games up front. So you'd get some exciting, the games that really nobody cares about, in late December and players opt out of. if you played them early in the season, then people might be more interested. So it's an interesting concept, and it would certainly get some interesting games out there. But week 0 this year, I mean, what's the major matchup? Really? The major matchup for that week is Nebraska Northwestern, which I believe is being played in Dublin, Ireland. Almost said Dublin, Ohio. So again, that'll be a fun game. It'll maybe be a good gauge for both of these teams. Nebraska, Scott Frost on the hot seat. Northwestern, down year last year, and one of my favorite coaches, Pat Fitzgerald. So that'll be an interesting matchup. Good evening, Rick. Good to see you. But other than that, you got Nevada at New Mexico State. Austin P, who do we know likes that team, at Western Kentucky. Idaho State at UNLV, UConn at Utah State, Wyoming at Illinois. Might be some interest in that game. Duquesne at Florida State. Florida State will get off to a great start. Charlotte at Florida Atlantic. Might be some interest there. Florida A&M at North Carolina. North Texas at UTEP, and Vanderbilt at Hawaii. By the way, this is one of the reasons I think they have week 0. If I remember right, they kind of instituted it so Hawaii would be able to some teams can play 13 games and Hawaii can get all their games in. I don't know all the logistics, but apparently that's why the week 0 was put in the first place. So they do have a football team. I believe they play at the Division II level. Carlos, maybe you can help me out. I don't believe they're playing in the FBS. If Carlos, you can tell me what league they play in. We'll be glad to talk more about Austin P through the year. I'm not going to be able to get excited about Austin P too much, but who knows? If they upset Western Kentucky, then maybe we'll have something to talk about. I think Western Kentucky had a decent year last year. Let's look at some of the news around, and we'll get into some interesting stories as well. I want to get into this a little bit, the situation at Oklahoma. My original take is one thing. We'll talk about it a little bit as we have a little bit bigger crowd as we go forward. So they played in the Atlantic Sun, so they are an FBS. Let's take a quick look since Carlos is telling me where they play. The Atlantic Sun, so they do not play FBS. I know they play Division I college basketball, but they do not play in the FBS division of NCAA football. So I'm guessing it's either I don't know what they call it. What's the first league below the NCAA now? I don't think we go right to Division II, do we? Maybe we do. Division I AA, excuse me, 1AA, and I'm guessing that's where they are playing. Yes, there they are right there. Atlantic Sun, Austin P, Central Arkansas, Eastern Kentucky, Jacksonville State, Kennesaw State, and North Alabama. Well, look at that. First year in the conference. So they're moving up, I'm assuming, to this division as well. Correct, Carlos, into the 1AA? We'll give you a couple of chances to talk about your team. Again, we'll jump into this Oklahoma situation a little bit. I want to go through some other news first because I got to, my gut reaction when I heard the story about Coach Gundy at Oklahoma. I had one take, and now my take has changed a little bit after head coach Venable made some comments after the comments that Coach Gundy had. We'll talk a little bit about that going forward. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I just feel it's something we got to touch on. Real quickly, some news around the NFL. It is almost the NFL light, right? Alabama wide receiver JoJo Earl is expected to miss 6 to 8 weeks. He fractured a foot in practice Tuesday, I believe. Actually, doesn't say. A couple of days ago, he said on Wednesday, Saban did. So, not a great start for Alabama, but they seem to have stockpiles of wide receivers, so maybe it's not such a big deal. A bigger deal, Wake Forest Demon Deacons quarterback Sam Hartman, and if I'd seen this more recently, I would have had tried to get Larry Sorensen on. We'll get him on next week. Sam Hartman is out indefinitely with a non-football related issue. The school announced Wednesday. Dave Clawson, assistant Hartman, will return at some point this season. Clawson said Hartman underwent a medical procedure Tuesday night after seeking medical attention during a workout earlier in the day. The school did not specify the nature of the situation, citing privacy laws. Clawson said it's just one of those things that could happen to any one of us. As we get more information on this, we'll certainly share it. We certainly follow Wake Forest fairly closely on this team because of our ties to Larry Sorensen. And we do wish Sam Hartman, well. He's one of just, he had a great year last year, and he's one of just 16 Power 5 quarterbacks in history to boast 50-plus touchdowns. So very important piece of the Wake Forest team that could cause an issue for Wake Forest this year. So we'll see how that goes. Some other news around the league as we continue, and you guys, as we have topics, you guys feel free to jump in. Nick Rolovich, former Washington State football coach who was let go last year, has filed a wrongful termination suit for $25 million against the school. The claim was filed on Rolovich's behalf by the state's Office of Risk Management. It's a prerequisite for filing a lawsuit against a state agency, which obviously Washington State would be. So we'll see what this is all about. He was denied, if you remember, he wouldn't get the vaccine last year, and he was denied a religious exemption from the governor, Jay Inslee, who had mandated that all state employees must get the vaccination, and he was let go shortly thereafter. He coached just 11 games for the Cougars over 2 seasons, going 5-6. He replaced Mike Leach. So that'll be an interesting thing to follow, I suppose, going forward. Lawsuits are prevalent among the sports world today. Elia Drinkwitz, the coach at Missouri, has named Brady Cook to be his starting quarterback. And also, maybe the biggest story of this week in college football, the Big Ten is very close to. Let me get this thing down here. Sorry, Carlos. We'll like to keep you in here, but the Big Ten is very close, by the way, to signing a new media rights deal, which would take effect in 2024. In it, ESPN and ABC would be out. ABC's had a relationship with the Big Ten since around 1966. So 60 years of history gone. Fox, CBS, and NBC likely will share in this agreement, and it will be north of $1 billion. And now you know why teams like UCLA and USC are knocking at the door to join this conference, and likely Notre Dame will follow at some point. I mean, look at the money that these teams are going to split. We're talking $75 million a year, most likely, for these schools. So that's kind of the big story of the year. Look, this is the Big Ten. When they bring in USC and UCLA, they're going to stretch across the country. They can cover the time zones from noon starts right through 9, 10 o'clock starts. And Fox, CBS, and NBC likely will have games for the Big Ten right through every window of that Saturday, schedule. So $1 billion, guys. ESPN dropped out how much money can you spend? You've already got a huge contract that's going to be going into play with ESPN and ABC for the SEC starting in 2025 or 2024, I think, and CBS will be out. So CBS gets involved in the Big Ten after losing out on the SEC. So look at, this is what's making the world of college football go around and around, right? Money. We know it. That's why we're seeing the realignment, and that's kind of what things are shaping up to be going forward in college football. So anyway, let's talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about this story with with Coach Gundy, longest term tenured coach in the Big 12. He'd been part of the Oklahoma coaching staff for, I think, since I want to say at least 12 years. He'd been with the program for nearly 30. He started out as a player with Oklahoma. His brother, obviously, is Mike Gundy, the head coach at Oklahoma State. This past weekend in a player meeting, he took one of the players' iPads, started reading from it, and said more than once a word that should not be uttered. The N-word was said. His version was he just started reading and he didn't know he said it. And my original take on this on Monday was, seems like an honest mistake. You know, there is something to the fact that, you know, the word is used, you know, the word is used by young black athletes, young black men, more often than it probably should. And nobody should be uttering the word. So I am, you know, I certainly understand the ramifications of using it. It turns out that possibly we didn't hear the whole story, as Coach Venable, the head coach at Oklahoma, said yesterday that wasn't the whole story, that he read from the iPad and repeated the word more than once, so he would have known what he was saying. So I'm not really sure where to go here. My original thought was, you know, I had some compassion for Coach Gundy because he read something without thinking. It was there in front of him. He wasn't paying attention to what he read, and he just blurted it out. That doesn't appear to be the case. So we're going to have to wait and maybe get more information here. And it's just, you know, I don't know. Disney should have stayed. ABC. I think you're talking about the rights. That's ESPN Plus content. Well, I don't know what we're talking about. You're talking about the Big Ten? You're talking about the SEC? It won't be on ESPN Plus. I don't think. I think you're going to get primetime games is what you're going to get there. Let's see what Carl's got to say about this topic here. Young people in New York City use it too much, and not all these kids are black ethnicity. That's a good point. I mean, look at upstate here. It's the same thing, Carlos, to be honest with you. Maybe not as prevalent, but I know from firsthand experience, people in my family in high school were using this word like they were, you know, gangsters, and it shouldn't. Look at it. It's a word that should not be being used by whites. Shouldn't be being used by blacks, and it shouldn't have been used by Coach Gundy. And if it in fact was an honest mistake, first of all, the kid shouldn't have had it on his iPad. Second of all, if it was an honest mistake, then I don't know that Coach Gundy should have had to resign, but if he repeated the word more than once, then it obviously wasn't an honest mistake, and we've got to look a little differently. Kenny's point on my messenger, about the word being used by young, blacks and whites, by the way. Again, as Carlos said, it's not just the black youth; it's young whites too. It's kind of cultural appropriation, I suppose, in a way, but you shouldn't be using it. And it's not a good story. It's not a good look for Oklahoma. It's not a good look for Coach Gundy. It's not a good look for Coach Venable. He resigns. They'll probably hope the story goes away fairly quickly. It's a shame. I mean, a good coaching career, by all accounts, a good person makes a bad mistake and his career is over because it's unlikely that he'll get another job. This is a university setting using this as a teaching moment. Again, I hope they use it the right way and not just against Coach Gundy, but to your point, Carlos, as a teaching moment for the young men, all the young men on that team, that words matter. That's the unfortunate part of this. Again, whether it's used by the players on the team, whether it's used by the black players or the white players on the team, it doesn't matter to me. Let's just say it's used by the black players in the team. It does not give Coach Gundy the right to use the word. Right? 2 wrongs don't make a right. So if he did know what he was doing, I don't think it was malicious necessarily, but if you know what you said, you don't repeat it. So very unfortunate situation. Again, I hope they do use it as a teaching moment, Carlos, and maybe something positive comes out of this situation and we stop. Again, it's a word that needs to disappear, and it won't if, it's going to be used, as part of a younger culture, again, black or white. It's not a good situation. So hopefully it goes away. What else is going around the world of college football? Let me take a quick look around here and see what I got. We talked about Hartman. Interesting note I saw this afternoon as well, and this is one of interest, I'm sure, to Rick Sherlock. Recruits this year will be allowed to attend the largest outdoor cocktail party, the Florida-Georgia game in Jacksonville. The 2 schools for years have agreed not to. Let me read this the correct way. So they agreed not to, for logistical reasons, to give tickets to recruits, but this year they will, because hosting recruits on a neutral site is not the same as doing so for home games. So they can do it, and they've had an agreement not to do it here for the past couple of years, but they will be attending this year. Look at these games are important for getting recruits. When you can see big rivalry games and important games up close and see what the atmosphere is, it's a big inducement to get these kids in here. And I'd rather see them invite them to rivalry football games than pay them money to go to their school. So you got here. We're going to look at the rankings here in a second, Rick. Some of the early rankings are out: Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. No surprise there, right? We're going to take a quick look here in a second. We'll get to the top 25 in the coaches poll, Rick. Again, I'm not huge on preseason polls because it does put some teams, it gives some teams an advantage. It puts some other teams that might be good at a disadvantage. But look, at polls are what drives college sports, and we'll see what they do going forward. Anything else I wanted to chat about? We talked about Cal Gundy, and that story probably will not go away very quickly. Let's jump quickly. Do I have a banner for the top 25? I don't know if I do or not. Let's see. Bear with me a second here, guys. Nope, I don't think I do. So we'll just go through this. So as Rick said, the top 25 is out. Top 3 in the coaches poll. Where's Rick's comment? I don't think he even mentioned it. You'd probably like the coach. There you go. You do have Ohio State in there. The coaches poll, and I'm not going to look at the others right now. I'm going to stick on the coaches poll. That's the one I usually stick to throughout the year because the coaches are the ones that, to me, I like the coaches poll better. That's all. So anyway, the top 3 are Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. They all got first place votes. Alabama got 54 of the 65. Ohio State got 5. Georgia got 6. Clemson came in at number 4. Notre Dame and Michigan at 5 and 6. Texas A&M at 7. Utah, interestingly, in the top 10 to start the season. As I said, Utah is my pick to get to a playoff from outside of the normal players here, the normal suspects. Oklahoma, Jesus. Utah starts in the top 8. Good spot for Utah to start. Tough game for Utah to start the season, as they're going to start with, if I'm not mistaken, Rick, where are they going first game? Florida. Sorry, that's right. I was thinking that part of I knew it was the SEC. It's a Florida. So listen, Utah wins this game. Utah's set up to go quite a ways without losing a game. Tennessee, number 22. Let's see. Nope. Tennessee in the coaches poll, not ranked. 163 votes. So Houston was 25 with 257. They don't make the top 22 to start. Let's go through the rest. Oklahoma, 9. Baylor, 10. Oklahoma State, 11. Team to watch out for as well. Listen, Mike Gundy's one of the best coaches that people don't give credit to across the country. Maybe I just like coaches that are a little bit off center, off kilter, like Mike Gundy, like Lane Kiffin. But I love Mike Gundy, and he's done a great job at Oklahoma State. Great job. And he's won with offense. And the knock on him for years was he only could coach offense and he couldn't coach defense. Well, he's had a better defensive team than he's had an offensive team the last couple of years. So good job by Mike Gundy at adjusting to the personnel that he has. Oregon at 12, NC State at 13, Michigan State at 14. I think Michigan State's overrated here. I think NC State may be overrated as well. Maybe even Oregon. USC at 15, Pittsburgh at 16, Miami 17. I think Miami is going to surprise some people. I think Miami will get to the ACC championship game and potentially have a shot at least a New Year's Day bowl game, if not a shot at the playoff. ACC, Big 12, Pac-12, most likely need to go undefeated to get to the playoff. It's just the way that's just going to shake out most likely this year. You're going to have to go undefeated. Texas at 18. They did get one number one vote, by the way. You rarely see a team at 18 get one vote for the number one slot. Wake Forest at 19. They're going to have trouble holding that spot with Sam Hartman out indefinitely. We'll follow that story closely. Wisconsin, it comes in at 20. Kentucky, 21. I think they will finish higher. Kentucky, again, an underrated team. And Coach Stoops is a really good football coach and has done really a good job with this football program. Cincinnati, last year's Cinderella at 22. Arkansas, with a very strong year last year under Coach Pittman, at 23. Ole Miss falls to 24. I'd seen them in some earlier polls, 12 or 13. They've fallen to 24. And Houston from the AAC, also at 25. So the next highest vote getters just missing out, Iowa, Penn State, Tennessee, BYU, LSU, Auburn, UCF, North Carolina. Not going to go through all of these. There's a bunch of teams that just miss out here. Check your comments here. At least they found themselves on the list. Yeah, so again, they just missed. They had 163 votes, and Houston had 257. Not a bad start for Tennessee to begin the season. Tennessee, I think, will. I think they will improve this year. They had a pretty good movement forward last year, and I think under Josh Heupel, they're moving in the right direction. Problem is, the SEC is so competitive; it's going to be very tough for them to really get some traction. Michigan is rated too high this year. I agree, Rick. Where were they? 6? Yeah, Michigan 6. I think Michigan's going to finish out of the top 10. I can see them losing a couple of games. I still think they'll have a very good season, but I do think 6 is probably too high for Michigan as well. What do you got here? Carlos. Bleacher Report has them at 22. Well, listen, I can go find 100. There's 100 polls out there, right? That's why I've got to find one, and I got to stick with it so that I have some consistency through the year. And the coaches poll is the one that I prefer to follow until the playoff rankings come out. Then we kind of jump to that. Keep your money in a cigar box. With, I think I've said this before. When I do make wagers, I don't often bet on my teams because I don't want to be upset, especially if they're favorites, right? I might bet them as a dog. As a favorite, I don't like to bet them because I don't want to be upset that I lost money and they won a game because they didn't cover a spread. So I usually try not to wager on my teams because I want to enjoy those games. Carlos, Ole Miss and Arkansas will fall behind the University of Tennessee this year. Possibly, I can't say you're wrong there. Again, Tennessee is moving in a positive direction. Arkansas going to have trouble maintaining that success that they had last year. And Lane Kiffin is having to reload quite a bit at Ole Miss this year. But he's been successful in that transfer portal and recruiting so far. This is a key test for Lane Kiffin this year in my mind. If he wants to prove that he's in the upper echelon of coaches, which I think he is, he's got to coach this team up. And if he can get this team into the top 12 or top 15, top 12, I think he will have done a great job this year. But you're hello, Mickey Delaney. I'll let Mickey make one one non-college football comment here. Yankees suck. I don't disagree with you right now, Mickey, but we'll save that. Come into Friday, or I don't know what we'll talk about Friday, Carlos. You got to send me some topics. I got a couple I think I want to jump into, but we'll talk about that later. So anyway, welcome, Mickey. Good to have you with us, and I'm glad you're back for the this year's college football. We'll talk about your Washington teams soon as well. They were first half team last year, which we talking about Tennessee. I'm not sure. Again, Carlos, when we start jumping around, I don't know. Rick saying hello to Mick the Quick in the house. Everybody had good to have Mickey back. So welcome back, Mickey, and glad you're here participating. So there's your top. That's your top 25. Listen, I'm not going to get too excited about this or not excited. I mean, teams that I see here at the bottom that may do better, as I said, Kentucky, I can see being better than their ranking. I can see Miami being better than their ranking. I can see Oklahoma State, maybe. Mississippi as well being better in their ranking. I'll get into the teams outside of top 25 in a second. I should have started there, I guess. Utah, better than 8. Teams that I can see not being as good, maybe Clemson. Maybe Clemson not living up to number 4. Michigan, as we talked about, not living up to number 6. Texas A&M at 7. Look at Jimbo Fisher's got to prove something to me. I say it a lot. Jimbo Fisher wins the recruiting wars often. But the real wars are fought on the field. I shouldn't say wars. I hate that analogy. It's time to start winning some games and getting to an SEC championship game, much less a playoff. Playoffs? UT knocks. Okay. Tennessee's the first half team. How about Texas? You know what? Texas at 18. Listen, I'm not so sure. Look at it. It's going to be a big jump from where they were last year. They did not have a good season. They do have a new coach, quarterback coming in, and Ewan, if I'm saying his name right. Interesting year for Texas and Steve Scarsese. You know, the bottom better not fall out, or Arch Manning may decide to go somewhere else. I can see Texas not living up to this number 18 ranking, though. So, and by the way, who voted number 1? Who voted number 1? Guy's got to be in Austin, right? I mean, jeepers. Oklahoma, I could see maybe not living up to number 9. Now they've got some distractions that they don't need, right? Another problem in Tennessee, distractions. Are they going to get sanctions in Tennessee? These are things that you cannot dismiss as not meaning anything, because the kids read these stories in the press every day on the internet. I don't read papers, I'm sure. But until these, and again, this is the problem with college sports, right? A coach that's gone, Jeremy Pruitt, long gone. And most of his players are probably long gone, but Josh Heupel and these kids that are playing for him will pay the price for Jeremy Pruitt's indiscretions if they do have sanctions come down. You get a thank you, Rick. You're going to go down on TJ Sports Pick'em. I got to get that set up, by the way, for the pros. Anybody but Ohio State. Frank, good afternoon or good morning. Good evening. Frank Frank is one of the hosts of Gloved Fist, by the way, guys. If you haven't watched Gloved Fist on Northeast Streaming Sports, please check it out. Monday nights they're on live on what are they live on? Roku. They're live on the YouTube network for Northeast Streaming Sports. And Frank and Jack, you all know Jack. For Jack Hirsch, the Hall of Fame boxing writer. These guys do a great job. If you're into boxing, you got to watch Glove Fist. And Frank has his own show at Northeast Streaming Sports as well. Carlos, and so thanks for coming in tonight and commenting, Frank. Good to have you with us as always. Clemson and Texas Tech have to do better. Texas Tech, listen, I think Texas Tech is a team that could make a jump here. Did they make it into this? Did they get any votes? No votes at all for Texas Tech. I'm a little surprised that they don't have at least a vote somewhere in here. They don't even rank in the, the also rans, which is a little surprising to me. They got a new coach in Joey McGuire. They got a new offensive coordinator. There's some excitement on campus. We'll see if this team is better, but I think Texas Tech, I think TCU is going to be better this year as well. And I also think that with Sonny Dykes coming back home to TCU, that's going to be a much different program than it was under Gary Patterson. I think Sonny Dykes is going to bring some excitement to that offense. Patterson was more of a defensive-minded head coach and grind it out a little bit. So we'll see. Georgia, for instance. Sorry, I got my wrong mouse here. What are we talking about here? Georgia, for instance. Rick, not sure. I might have missed a comment here somewhere. Anybody but Ohio State. I love that one, Frank. Ohio State's going to be in it. They're going to be in it to the end, though. I'll wait for Rick to get. Good evening, Dave Guyette. Good to have you with us tonight. What are some of the others? So I was talking about teams that were possibly too. Listen, right. If you're talking about teams too highly ranked, Georgia, I think Rick. Listen. As much as I come to really like Kirby Smart, I'm glad the monkey got off his back last year. I just think he's going to have a lot of trouble. Even though these teams like Georgia and Alabama, they reload. Every now and again, you're going to have a step back, like Clemson had last year. And look, Clemson had a really good season last year, but everybody thinks it was a huge failure. He lost 2 games. So Georgia could have that type of season, but still, one of the best programs in the country. Arch leaving Texas. It's possible. Look at these kids. These early signing. I mean, we're talking about 2023. We're already talking about the 2024 class and kids getting ready to commit. You don't know that the kids from 2023 are going to show up because how many, again, I'd love to see some stats on how many kids that were early signings or signings at all for any of these FBS schools end up going to the schools that they actually commit to at first. We all the story of the quarterback, and I don't remember his name now, that committed to Ohio State last year, got $1 million in NIL money, and never set foot on campus. I think Florida's going to have a tough year, Frank. It's a really good question. I just think it's going to be a rough. I think it's going to be a rough start for Napier there in Florida. Mullen left the cupboard dry. Napier, by all accounts, had a decent recruiting season, a fair transfer portal season. But I can see Florida finishing, the middle of the pack of their division. Let's take a quick look at it since we're talking about it. Let's go down to the SEC. I mean, the SEC is just so tough. And if you're not at the top of your game, I cannot see him finishing ahead of Georgia as much as I see as Georgia taking a step back. I think Kentucky finishes ahead of them. I think Tennessee finishes ahead of them. So I've got them like fourth in the East is where I would see Florida right now. Could be a tough year for Florida. And Dan Mullen, and they're going to pay the price for what Dan Mullen got fired for, and that was lack of recruiting. Dan Mullen's a good football coach. But Dan Mullen can't recruit with the Alabamas and the Georgias, maybe even the Ole Misses with Lane Kiffin. He's not the recruiter that these guys are. Or have the coaches on his staff that meet the same standards that the recruiting coaches on these other programs reach. So Florida is probably going to pay the price for Dan Mullen's last few years at Florida, which, again, the bottom kind of fell out last year. I think they'll be better, Frank. I just don't think they're going to be, all the way back for a little bit yet. And I hope Napier gets a chance because I think he's a good football coach. Thank you, by the way. We did have our second anniversary this past weekend, so thank you for that, Rick. TGI Sports Talk debuted on August 7th, 2020, in the middle of the pandemic as something fun to do. And I was doing it for an hour, and it's turned into about, 10 hours a week I'm on the air now, maybe more. Frank agrees. Florida will be lucky to go 6-6, 2-6 in the SEC. I wouldn't disagree, Frank, that's kind of where we're looking at Florida going. Going to be a tough season for Napier. So, and the SEC just a tough place to be rebuilding, unless you're Alabama. And listen, Florida used to reload similar to Georgia and Alabama when Steve Spurrier was there, but those days are gone for Florida. They can't just reload like Alabama and Georgia. They just can't. And even teams that can reload, like Clemson did for nearly a decade, eventually they're going to step back. As I said, Georgia may step back this year, have a really good season. They could go 10-2. It'll be a disappointment for Georgia fans. It's a really good season. But, especially with realignment now, and it all about the college football playoff, which I like. But, there's just, good seasons get lost. A lot of people miss the Spurs. Listen, the old ball coach was one of my favorite coaches and of all time. Did a great job everywhere he went, except pretty much the Redskins, the team formerly known as the Redskins. And I guess I can say the Redskins tonight because it was the Redskins that he coached. So no $20 in a jar tonight. But Steve Spurrier, Steve Spurrier won at Duke. Consistently. How many coaches have done that over the years? Then he goes to his alma mater in Florida and revives a program that wasn't doing all that well for a long time and turned it back into a national power year after year after year. Got his national championship, which was a tough for him to get. Maybe should have won more, but whatever. Steve Spurrier is still a great coach. He leaves for the NFL, doesn't work out. But he comes back to go to South Carolina and wins at South Carolina. Hardly anybody wins at South Carolina. Did a good job at South Carolina. What do you got, Frank? You hate Ohio State, but I think they'll, a very good chance that'll happen. I think they definitely make the playoff. I think one team gets in. Frank, if you missed the show 2 weeks ago, and guys, remember last year we did not have a college football huddle because we had a special trade deadline show for the Major League Baseball. But 2 weeks ago when I was talking about my predictions for the playoff, I have Utah sneaking in there. Who else did I have? So I had Alabama. I had, good God, I can't remember. Let me look at my top 25 here and I'll jog my memory. I had Alabama. I had Utah, Ohio State, and Notre Dame is my final four. I think Utah, and again, as I said, if you miss it at the top, Frank, Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, you have to go undefeated probably to get to the 14 playoff. Just in my mind, those leagues are the only way somebody's going to get there. What do you say here? Alabama making the record 2-10. Listen, it's funny when people talked before the Big Ten expansion talked about Ohio State, Michigan, all these teams going to the SEC and forming a super conference. Ohio State doesn't want to go to the SEC. They never win. Good point. And Ohio State. So Frank, this is interesting. So Frank, in several posts, this is Ohio State. Anybody but Ohio State first, right, Frank? Then he posts their abysmal record against the SEC in bowl games. And then he picks it to beat Alabama. Nice move, Frank. You could be right. Look at Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day will end up in the NFL at some point, by the way. Ryan Day is one of the best coaches in football. The best thing that happened to Ohio State was Urban Meyer leaving before things imploded and handing the keys to Ryan Day. One of the most underrated coaches, and maybe that's not fair because maybe he's not underrated anymore. But in my mind, he doesn't get enough press. We hear all about Nick Saban. We hear all about Kirby Smart. We hear all about Dabo Swinney, who I love. But Ryan Day is a great football coach. We hear about, Coach the dancing fool from LSU, Kelly. God, what did you say here, Mickey? By the way, I didn't mean to skip you. $100 in the jar. If I'm up to 5 times I said Redskins, there's 6. At the time, they were the Redskins. Just going to see how much I can roll up tonight. You think the Bucks are due? You know what? They are. And again, as I said, Ryan Day's had this team on the upswing. Got to play some defense there in Ohio State, though. They changed offensive coordinators. They got a big game to start the season against Notre Dame, which is going to be a bellwether game for both of these teams. I do think either one of them could lose this game and still make it to the title game if they run the table. But it's a very important game. I do think Ohio State's probably going to handle Notre Dame fairly easily, but it's hard to say. It's really hard to say. Notre Dame's going to be fired up to play for their new head coach. We'll see how they come out. It's going to be because we don't get to see preseason games. We don't know what we're going to get in these first couple of weeks until we see these teams play. So it's going to be very interesting and a great way to start the season. And I think it's a great matchup for week 1. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. I would say it's very possible that game could turn into a blowout. I think Notre Dame keeps it close-ish. Frank, just because there's going to be a lot of emotion there, and that could cut both ways, right? I mean, emotion can really spur you on to victory, or it can really just overwhelm you until you're frozen and you cannot perform the way you want to. So we'll see. And I guess, Frank, you probably know this from boxing, right? Emotion is, again, a two-edged sword where it can be a great propellant or it can hinder you in your performance. So it could be a blowout. It could get out of hand. We'll see. Michigan found out what playing the SEC team does to a team with Kaepernick. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, not probably a good choice there for Coach Harbaugh. I'm not sure where Michigan's going, right? I mean, I do think that Harbaugh was interested in the NFL after last season, after finally winning the Big Ten for the first time in, I don't remember now, 17 years, finally beating Ohio State, getting to the playoff. I think Harbaugh feels like he hit his high water mark. I think he was looking to jump, and I think that he was much more interested in the NFL than the NFL was in him. And he could look for a soft landing place again after this year. I don't think this year is going to be I don't think it'll be a horrible year. Not like it was 2 years before last year, or the year before last year. But I do think that Michigan's going to stumble. They'll lose to Ohio State. Could lose to Michigan State. let's just go through Michigan's. What the hell? Let's go through, and we've done this a couple of times. If you got a team you want to go through the schedule, and I'll give you my take on where they're going to finish. So they start against Colorado State. I'm going to give them a win there to playing at home. They play Hawaii at home. That's going to be a win. They play Connecticut. They're not going to lose there. That's 3-0. Maryland, 4-0. I'm going to have them losing at Iowa. I like Kurt Ferentz at home, especially fairly early in the season. So there's your four. Now they're 4-1. They get Indiana at Indiana. That's going to be an interesting game. We'll find out whether Indiana is closer to where they were 2 years ago, which was really good, or last year, which was really bad. So we're going to find out a lot about this program. I'm going to say Michigan State beats them. So that's 5-1. Lose to Penn State, 5-2. Lose to Michigan State, 5-3. Beat Rutgers, 6-3. Beat Nebraska, 7-3. Beat Illinois, 8-3. Lose to Ohio State, 8-4. Actually, I may go back and say they beat Penn State at home. So I'll revise that, and I'll have them 9-3. How about that? Not going to win the Big Ten. Probably not going to get them in the Big Ten championship game. And I think that's where they're going to be. Let's see. What do you got here? Vikings did not seem to want them. You follow Vikings very closely, Rick. From watching them from the outside, it felt the same way. It felt like Harbaugh was interested in the Vikings more than the Vikings were interested in Harbaugh. And it's funny how he pulled his name out of consideration for a job he wasn't going to get. Trying to save face, obviously. That conference is going to have to be more competitive. We're talking about the Big Ten. How's the Big Ten not competitive now, Carlos? I mean, did I miss something? Let's take a quick look here. Again, both divisions, except for Ohio State. I think Ohio State will probably. I got something going on here where I can't seem to get my mouse to work. There we go. The Big Ten. That's the Big 12. Let's look at the East. You got Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Penn State. Very competitive. Ohio State ought to win this division, I would think, fairly easily this year because I'm not a big Penn State fan. And I think I saw a comment from Rick or somebody that Penn State would be better. Let's see what I saw here. Penn State looks stronger. Oh, that's you, Carlos. Sorry. I'm not a big James Franklin fan. It always feels like they should be better than what they are. But this is a very competitive division. The West is competitive. Iowa's always competitive. Minnesota, I love PJ Fleck. I think he's a great coach, and I think he'll probably be moving on to a better job this year when he has another good year with Minnesota. Purdue had a good year last year. Wisconsin's always competitive. Scott Frost is desperate this year. Do I think that turns into wins? I don't know. So this is a very competitive league. Myself, again, looking at this conference, and I guess what we'll do is we'll kind of go around these conferences now. I wanted to kind of get into this topic anyway, so we're kind of going around the Power 5 conferences. We talked a little bit about the SEC. We'll jump back. But since we're on the Big Ten, let's flesh it out. I see this being Ohio State in the East, followed probably by Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State. They could finish in any order, 2, 3, and 4. Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland they can stay home. The West, which is going to get much better with UCLA and I don't know how they're going to break this down, but I would think UCLA and USC both have to play in the West when they come in here. One of these other teams will have to move to the East, probably either Illinois or Northwestern would be my bet, maybe Purdue. But as far as the West this coming year, I'm going to take Minnesota and PJ Fleck to win this division and go to the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State and get their doors blown in. That's what's going to happen in the Big Ten. So any comments you want to make there? Look, at always a very competitive. They're going to get at least one team in. Very doubtful 2 teams are coming from this conference. Very doubtful in my mind. Ohio State, the only other team. I mean, it would have to be Michigan. Most likely have to be Michigan, unless Iowa could come out of nowhere, I suppose. To if they went undefeated, they'd have to win the Big Ten championship game against an undefeated Ohio State and both get in. It would have to be a situation similar to that. Wisconsin, listen, Wisconsin is always competitive, as I said before. Let's remember, though, what did I do with that little cheat sheet here? Let's remember something. Wisconsin the last couple of years has not played their best football. And I think it's going to take a little bit of work for this team to get themselves back to where they've been, historically. Again, a good competitive program, but they've struggled recently under, I'm trying to think of the coach's name right now. Somebody help me out here. Oh, Paul Chryst, yeah. Paul Chryst has had a good career here and has he's been the coach here since 2015. But it's time for him to really, I think, take this team to the next level. And I don't know that he's the coach necessarily to do it. They have never played back to Barry Alvarez's high water marks at Wisconsin. And I just don't think this is a team that's going to get over the hump this year in the Big Ten. I just don't. You can see it as I can tell you right now, I did pick, as I said, I picked Michigan, Minnesota to play Ohio State in this final. But I could see it being Iowa. I could see it being Wisconsin. I could even possibly see it being Purdue if they continue the momentum that they were building last year. But whoever that is going to be a much weaker team than Ohio State. And that team's going to have to, it's probably going to have a loss or two. And for the Big Ten to get 2 teams in, they're going to have to be a 1-loss team probably from the West that beats an undefeated Ohio State team in the championship, most likely. Hate the fact that the Big Ten is cannon fodder for Ohio State. I don't disagree. Look, there's some good competitive teams in here, Frank, but Ohio State is just absolutely loaded, as you said. And I think the Michigan game this year could be ugly. Woo Pig, I guess we got an Arkansas fan in the room tonight. Welcome, Bigger 8T. I'm not sure. I'm probably not saying that right. It's probably supposed to be something that I, with my Perth high school brain, cannot get my head around. At least Alabama is challenged by Texas and Texas A&M, Auburn, and LSU. Listen, I don't think Auburn and LSU are going to have very good years this year, Frank. Let's go to the SEC since we're talking about that. Now we'll jump around here a little bit. Alabama. I just don't see Alabama really getting challenged in the East this year, or the West, excuse me, of the SEC, unless it's Texas A&M. I said at the top of the show, it is time for Jimbo Fisher to put up or shut up. He talks a good game about Alabama, about Nick Saban. He comes out at the top of the recruiting rankings year after year. But we still haven't sniffed an SEC championship game. Jimbo Fisher's been a little bit of a disappointment since he won the national championship with Florida State in 2015. The year's escaping me, but around there. Let's see. Is that what that's supposed to be? Big Woo Pig. Is that big? I can't say if that's what that's supposed to be, B. I don't know, buddy. I can't make that work. Anyway, I apologize. Listen, Arkansas could surprise. Arkansas had a great year under Sam Pittman last year. He gets an extension. They could surprise in the West. I think the West is very competitive. You could see Ole Miss continue. Again, I think this is a key year for Lane Kiffin. If he wants to be seen as one of the elite coaches in the country after taking Mississippi to some really good heights last year, a New Year's Day bowl game, and now he's lost a ton. He does well in the transfer portal. If he can rebuild, or I say reload, and keep this team competitive in the West, and I think it will help his standing. And I know Carlos and some of you others are not big fans of Lane Kiffin. I am. And I think Lane Kiffin's matured a lot in the last few years. I think he likes his spot at Mississippi. I don't think he lost out on the LSU job. I don't think he was interested in the LSU job. But and I think LSU is going to struggle with Coach Kelly the first year. Again, there's a lot to replace there. This program is another team similar to Florida. We talked about Frank before. I think that LSU has got some work to do to get back to the level they were when they won the national championship. One of the great flash in the pan seasons in history. Ed Orgeron, you talk about a comet burning bright, but burning fast and burning out. Ed Orgeron and that LSU program were that. Now, they've got a good history. LSU fans expect a lot, though. They think they should be competing for national championships every year like Alabama. And you know what? I still think Coach Kelly made a mistake going there. He should have stayed at Notre Dame. He would have had the same kind of money. He could win one national championship at Notre Dame and be a god. And at LSU, they're going to expect more. So Alabama wins this West. But I think, if they're going to get pushed, you're going to have a sleeper come out of there. It's a very tough division. I mean, somebody's going to finish last among Auburn. Some great football programs. Arkansas. Oh, Jesus. Just clicked on the wrong thing here. Sorry. Let me get back to where I was. I'm click happy with my mouse. Arkansas, Auburn, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Texas A&M won't finish last. There's going to be a really good football program unless it's Mississippi State. Look, at Mike Leach is going to have a hard time competing in this division. He's improved this Mississippi State team. He's got a tough lot here. So, I mean, Auburn, LSU, or Mississippi State's finishing last in this division. In the East, I really think Kentucky's going to win this division. Great season last year. Really good defense. They run the ball. They get some decent quarterback play. They're in games all the time. They got to win the better games, against the better competition. But I could see Kentucky winning this division. I know Rick's going to disagree with me and tell me that Georgia's going to, not miss a beat this year. But I think Georgia's going to have a hiccup. Kentucky's big game is probably going to be against that Georgia team. So I'm going to go with an upset and take Kentucky to win this East Division and play Alabama in the SEC championship game. How about that? And probably get creamed, by the way. What do you got here, Rick? Maybe we're not going to get to an Army game, unfortunately. The only games I can really get to, unless it's later in the year. I got a wedding. I found out the September 3rd game or whatever it is that we were talking about. The October 3rd game. We've got a baby on the way. Not me. my bonus daughter, and my wife's daughter. So we won't be able to get to that game. We'll see what we can do. But you said if we can't, we get our gathering for BJ's for one of. That's a good. We can do our gathering at BJ. You know what? I think that's a great idea. I mean, I could do that. Not the date of the wedding, but we can definitely have a gathering on a Saturday afternoon. They play at home at noontime, so it's early for everybody. That is a brilliant idea, Rick. Let's make sure we take a look at the schedule soon and put that get together. And listen, anybody who watches this show and is anywhere near the Albany area, you're welcome to come up and we'll have our little happy hour at BJ's Brew House. and Albany, and maybe watch some Army football. I think that's a great idea, Rick, and we'll put that together. So I know, Mickey, you're out in Washington. You can't partake. Carlos, you can come up and stay with Kenny out on the compound. Again, he doesn't bury the bodies that deep. Frank, don't know where you're at. I think you're in Philly, but I'm not sure. But if you should want to take a jaunt up to Albany, you're certainly welcome to come up and have some fun with the TGI Sports Talk crowd. We had a lot of fun with our last happy hour last year, and we got to get that together. So let's move on to the next. We're at 8:10. We got to get through these power conferences. Let's move to the ACC next, shall we? This is going to be an interesting competition. Wake Forest is going to take a step back. If Sam Hartman is out any period of time, it's going to be very tough for this team to keep up with Clemson for sure. I do think Florida State's going to be better this year. North Carolina State is ranked high and had a very good year last year, and it's still a good, solid team. Let me get rid of your comment there, Rick. Not that I don't want to see it, but I want to be able to put some others up. Listen, Clemson, I think, is going to rebound and win this division. North Carolina State, maybe even Boston College will compete for second. I do see improvement from Florida State, from Mike Norvell, and if they don't, Mike Norvell may be gone. And you might be seeing one Neon Dion, the head coach of Florida State, in a year if they don't turn this around. So we'll see what happens in the Atlantic here. Wake Forest, again, I think is going to have a tough time finishing in the first 3 or 4 of this conference without Sam Hartman, I'm afraid. And let me check Carlos's. What's Georgia Tech going to do? I think Georgia Tech is probably going to continue to lose. That's what I think. And I think their coach Collins will probably be one of the guys fired this year on the Division I FBS level. Because I see in the Coastal Division, I know it's going to feel like a homer. The U. Marco Cristobal. New attitude, new culture, renewed emphasis on the football program by the university in general. I think Miami takes huge strides this year and they win the Coastal Division. And I think they go to the ACC championship game and beat Clemson. The question is going to be, can they be undefeated when they do it and have a shot at the playoff? Big ask. That's a big ask. I do think they'll probably lose somewhere along the line, but I do think they'll win this Coastal Division. I don't see it being terribly competitive. I think Duke and Georgia Tech are going to be really bad. I think North Carolina will probably be a little bit better. They do have a new defensive coordinator, as we talked about, in Gene Chizik, the former Auburn coach. Maybe the coach in waiting there when Mac Brown goes is a new defensive coordinator. They got to be better on defense. And if they are, they'll score points like they always do, and they'll maybe give Miami a game when they play, and also maybe challenge them for the division. But I see Pittsburgh falling back this year without Kenny Pickett. Virginia's got a new head coach. Virginia Tech's got a new head coach, and I think there'll be some growing pains for both those programs. So I think Miami wins this division, and again gets to play in the ACC championship game. And this time, be competitive. And maybe not just competitive, but win the game. The Rock just redone their locker room. I heard that. The Rock is an alumnus of Miami, a former Hurricane football player, which people sometimes forget. They know he's a wrestler and certainly an Academy Award-winning actor. Sorry, he's not. That's not fair to The Rock. His movies are fun, right? So Miami, listen, there's a lot of emphasis on regaining the stature of this football program. And I think that's how I knew what you were talking about, Carlos. Do Miami's schedule. Okay. It's funny how you said that. I was reading it a little differently. Oh, God. I thought you had a question in there. Here we go with Miami's schedule. I think we did this before. I'm not sure. Bethune-Cookman. Well, that's a winner. I think it's Bethune-Cookman. I don't even know who the hell this team is. Bethune-Cookman. Sometimes it's hard with the acronyms they put in here. Bethune-Cookman's a win, 1-0. Southern Miss, 2-0. They're both at home, 2-0. Oops, sorry. Then they're going to get, who is this? Texas A&M. This will be a key game. Key game. This is on the road. This might be at a neutral site. This might be at Jerry World. I'm not sure where this game is. Let's see if I can see where this game is. I guess, nope, it's at Kyle Field. Again, this is going to be a key game for Miami, and I'm gonna say this is the game that propels this team to a great season. And they beat Texas A&M September 17th on ESPN at 9 p.m. Then they got another game off, Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders. That's going to be a win. That's 4-0. They got UNC Carolina at home. That's a win. 5-0. At Virginia Tech, tough game, rebuilding team, new head coach. I'm going to give them a win. 6-0. Versus Duke, 7-0. At Virginia, another tough game. Both Virginia teams on the road, both tough places to play. But I got them winning, 8-0. Florida State at home, big rivalry game. Win, 9-0. Georgia Tech win, 10-0. I'm going to have them losing at Clemson, 10-1. Beat Pittsburgh, 11-1 regular season for Miami. And they'll have a rematch against Clemson in the ACC championship game and win. Not enough to get to the playoff because I do believe they'd have to be undefeated to do it. There you go. Might be a homer. We'll see. All right. Anyway, that's how I see the ACC. Let's look at the Big 12. We want to get through the Big 12 and the Pac-12 quickly here before we end the show. I hope you guys are you can certainly continue with your comments. Let's look at the Big 12. We got 2 years of Oklahoma and Texas left. Theoretically, I do not think that will come to pass. I think they will leave early. But next year you'll have Cincinnati coming in. You'll have Houston coming in. You'll have BYU coming in. You'll have UCF coming in. This is going to be a very interesting league going forward. But this year, this is going to be a competitive league as well, I think. Oklahoma State, I think Mike Gundy, again, one of the most underrated coaches in the country. I think Oklahoma State wins this over Baylor. Could be a rematch in the championship game, Baylor and Oklahoma State. I see them finishing 1-2 and getting that to that rematch. But you'll have some challenge. You'll have some challenges from Oklahoma, obviously. And I could see Oklahoma maybe finishing ahead of Baylor. But I think Oklahoma State gets one of those spots. Maybe with a chance for the playoff. And you'll see better football at TCU, as I mentioned earlier. I think you'll see better football at Texas Tech. You're definitely going to see better football out of Iowa State this year and Matt Campbell's team. But I don't think those teams are ready to compete. And I think Kansas State, they're going to beat a couple of good teams. They always do. But they're going to be a middling team at best, I think. Texas, I do not think is going to meet that number 18 ranking. I think they'll be out of the top 25 and be hoping Arch Manning shows up in 2023. And West Virginia, I don't see doing much at all either. Again, I see a three-way battle here, maybe a four-way battle if Iowa State can get in it. A very competitive league. At the end of the day, I can see Baylor and Oklahoma State in a rematch in the Big 12 championship game, maybe Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, which would be a rematch of Bedlam, which would be a great, great final if that were to happen as well. But I see Oklahoma State winning this conference winning the championship game. Doubt they're going to get there undefeated because I see this league being very competitive, as I said, which means probably no playoff. Probably no playoff, which is good for Notre Dame because I don't see any of the Power 5 conferences getting 2 teams in this year. Ohio State, Alabama, Utah, which we'll talk about in a second, and Notre Dame. Let's move on to the Pac-12. Pac-12, another league where you're going to have to go undefeated, I think. And I do think Utah is going to do that. I think they're going to play Florida and have a good springboard from there. They got some tough games. I mean, they got to get by Oregon. They're going to have to get by UCLA, USC. They're going to be better, I think, both those teams. But I think Utah's got it this year. I think Utah's that team to watch out for this year. You know, Utah's had to rebuild this program a couple of times. Don't forget, you know, when they were in the Mountain West, they made it to a Sugar Bowl. And they go to the Pac-12, and the league has really kind of gone into the dumpster since they've been there. And they weren't very good for a while in that. You know, they were at the bottom of that dumpster, or near the bottom. And they've rebuilt this program to where they were as good as any team in the country at the end of last year. Now, I know they had 3 losses, but they were as good as any team in the country last year after their Rose Bowl victory. I still think, listen, it's possible Nebraska will be much, you know, that's a team to watch out for. If you want a team to come out of nowhere, Nebraska could be it. Let's stick with the Pac-12 real quick. So I got Utah winning this. I think Oregon will be their second again. Probably going to be the final. You could see USC or UCLA maybe slide into that championship game. I think it's going to take a year for Lincoln Riley to get things going and rolling at USC. I know everybody's excited with Caleb Williams and the kid from Pittsburgh, the wide receiver transferring in. I just think it's going to take a little time, a little more than a year to rebuild this program. Now, that doesn't mean they aren't going to beat up on the Arizonas and the Arizona States, and I think they will. I think they'll have a decent year. But I do not think that they're going to be as good as some people think they will be. I think Arizona State, Herm Edwards is on his way out of town. The investigation is still continuing into the improprieties in this program. And at the end of the day, while he's not accused of anything specifically, you still have to have oversight of the program that you're running. California, I don't see them really making a move. Colorado, I don't see much happening there. Oregon State, Stanford. Stanford has got one of the best coaches in the country, but they've struggled recently. You're going to have the pall hanging over this conference of UCLA and USC leaving soon. And I think it's going to cast a pall over the next 2 seasons in the Pac-12. I think Utah will capitalize on that, go undefeated, beat Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship, go undefeated into the national playoff. So that's the big six, the Power Five, the Power Five, and Notre Dame. So Notre Dame is one of the other, and we should take a quick look, I guess, at the independents. I think Army's going to have a really good team, be the best of the military academies again. BYU very strong, basically won basically won the Pac-12 South or whatever. Let's see, which division was that? Back up here. They beat all the teams in that they played, and gosh, I can't find the Pac-12 now. Oh, there is no divisions. Sorry about that. They did away with divisions. I forgot. So basically, they were one of the best teams in the Pac-12 last year. They beat everybody that they played. BYU's going to have a really good year this year. They'll probably go to a good bowl game, but they're not going to be a New Year's Day competitor. Liberty, good team the last few years. I see no reason they won't continue. They did lose Malik Willis, who did not go nearly as high in the NFL draft as we thought. But, they're going to have trouble replacing him because he was a very good college quarterback. New Mexico, nothing. Notre Dame, I said before, I think will get to the playoff. They could get there with one loss. They could get beat by Ohio State, run the table, and get there with one loss. That's assuming Ohio State, Alabama don't go into the championship game in their conferences undefeated and then lose to a one-loss team, because that's going to put up the possibility of two teams getting in from either the Big Ten or the SEC. UConn is nowhere. They got a new coach in Jim Mora, but maybe they'll be a little better. But this program has fallen off the map. I've said it many times when we've talked about realignment. UConn was destroyed when the Big East went out of existence. UConn had built under Randy Edsall the first time around. He'd built a very, very strong program. Went to a Fiesta Bowl. And then things started to fall apart in the Big East until there was no football league for them to go to. And they were a team without a conference and, no home. And no way to recruit. And you got UMass, which, good luck. UMass is not going to be competitive in football ever. They might better be moving down a division probably. So that's how I see it, guys. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in tonight. We'll finish up a couple minutes early. We're 2 weeks, as I said, 2 weeks from Saturday away from real football. We'll have some really good stuff to talk about next week. I'm going to try to get Larry Sorensen in to talk about the Sam Hartman situation at Wake Forest. Maybe we'll have a little more clarity on that by next week's show as well. I would have got him in tonight if I'd known about that story a little earlier. We'll also have Mark Mancini stopping in, I think, next week as well. And we'll talk about the Group of Six outlook next week. That'll be our focus as far as the conferences go. And we'll talk about all the other stories that are happening in college football. They never seem to go away. I will get the pick'em set up this week, Carlos. I've just been very, very, very overwhelmed with real life work. This work, which is fun for me. I love doing this. You guys know that. And just, life in general. So we'll get it done. Guys, thanks for watching tonight. Carlos, thanks. Frank, thanks for tuning in and thanks for contributing. Rick, as always, great job. I think I said Carlos. We missed Alan tonight. Mickey Delaney, thanks for being back with us. Whoever Big Woo Pig. I can't get that out of that. But listen, thanks for tuning in if you're still with us. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. All of you who did not comment and watch us later, thank you. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talks, College Football Huddle. We'll see you next week when we'll be just 10 days away from college football. See you later, guys.